Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about why I think ghosts actually do haunt most churches. So if it's your first time on my channel, welcome. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you've probably watched my one about the haunted church. And that's what's inspired me to make this video. Now a lot of people in the comments section, I've had about 1,000 comments on that video, they will agree with me and tell me their ghost stories. There's a lot of people who disagree and think I'm talking rubbish or lying or whatever. And then there's lots of Christians who just will not accept that ghosts exist, especially in a holy place. So I think it's quite obvious to think that ghosts might be in the graveyards where everyone gets buried. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, that is an obvious place you would find a ghost. But the not so obvious place would actually be inside these churches. So, how could that be possible? Why would there be a ghost inside? Well, this church we visited today is a very interesting one, and it actually hides a dark secret. But I think this is a lot more common than we actually realise. And before I talk about the story from this church, I'll explain to you all about ledger stones and the fact that in these churches there's tens and sometimes hundreds of people that actually get buried underneath the floors. Now, to get buried underneath a church is thought to be a great honour, and it normally happens to like kings, knights, vicars, very important people, and often the rich. And here we can see in this church a typical ledger stone, and a ledger stone is just simply a word for a gravestone that's inside a church, often laid on the floor itself. So this person must have had a deep connection to this actual church. Here's some footage for one of my other videos, and this is in St David's Cathedral. Now, to be buried in a cathedral is next level, and often you'll find like a big monument. These are called tomb effigies. So there's someone very, very important buried underneath here. So back to this church. What's the story here? Well, as I wandered around, I found about 4 or 5 ledger stones. One of them is for a 3-month-old baby, which is really sad. Now, this church is very cold and damp, and these grates here below, I believe, was the old heating system, which obviously was no good. So a few years back, it had a whole new system put in with new type radiators. So underneath all these pews, they had to dig up the area to put pipes to add the radiators. And when they did this, they found 103 bodies. Now, all of these bodies were unidentified. There's no records of who they were. So, if it's a great honour to be buried underneath a church, surely there will be records and you'll have a ledger stone, and it'll be written in a book somewhere. After the heating system was put in, they reburied the bodies and they're still here to this day underneath these pews. So I decided to turn the lights off, sit on the pews, and just relax for a while. Now, as I said before, I don't think this is uncommon. I think the only reason they found these bodies is because they had to dig up underneath. But how many churches are out there with people have been buried that not being registered? So if you bury someone against their will, or maybe they're just not happy because they're not being recognised, could that make someone turn into a ghost? Well, I think that's very plausible. Also, people who have been buried here legitimately, with a ledger stone or a tomb effigy, of course, they could be turned into ghosts as well. And when I say turn to ghost, it's probably the wrong wording. I've experienced ghosts since I was like very young, and I'm really, really interested in finding out what exactly they are. Are they just energies? Because these churches have so much memories. There's been so many good times here, and mostly bad from all the funerals that are done here. So all that grief and bad energy. Is this what ghosts are? Is it the typical things from the movies, like the horror films? as I keep on visiting these churches, I'm sure I'm going to find out more and more information. So I hope you enjoyed this short video. I'm going to do a much longer one on a normal tour of this church, because it is a very beautiful one. So please check that one out, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already.